My spirit is in heaven and Maury's body is in a coffin under the ground.
He is in heaven right now, probably having a lot of fun, but he still kind of misses me.
I was 7.5. My dad had died, and he was 39.
They asked what happened, how did he die, and why? You know, why couldn't someone have cured him?
She had cancer, and she didn't think that she would live long, and she did not want Larry to know, or either one of her children to know at that point.
What makes it so difficult to talk about death to children is the fact that it is the one thing we don't have any control over, and to be able to express that to a child brings out our own vulnerabilities. That's one reason. Another reason is that we don't like to see our children in pain. We like to give them answers, concrete answers, and a lot about death, we just don't have those answers.
A few days after Christmas, I came bouncing down the stairs as a 5-year-old. And there was a family friend at the bottom of the stairs who told me that God came and took my father. I spent weeks looking for my father and waiting for him to come home. Little did I know how much my life would change at that point.
Adults who were not told about death when they were children and were held back from understanding what was going on and just treated like this is adult business, not children business, are at a disadvantage.
It's important for kids to say goodbye when somebody dies for the same reason it's important for adults to say goodbye. It's very hard to go on without having some sense of service, ceremony, and closure.
I had to allow Larry to be with his mom before she died. I had to, because I did not have that chance to say goodbye to my dad.
It's really sad when a child experiences death, and such a close death at such a young age. But death is part of life, and we all lose people. And how you handle that is very, very important in your life.
And I think what we've tried to tell our kids is that our bodies are just a small part of who we are, and our spirits are much more important than our bodies. I think I've had those kinds of conversations, but I haven't painted like the pearly gates and the angels on clouds.
Children love to believe in angels. They love to believe in spiritual things. And angels give it some sense and some security and makes it less abstract.
Heaven is like a dream. You can do whatever you want without being told to.
Like in the middle, you'll see God, and then he'll talk to you, and then he'll show you to where your family is, like all your ancestors and stuff, and then you can meet them.
He looks exactly the same, but he has wings.
And is he happy or sad?
Happy.
When I sit and pray and just think about my mother, I feel relaxed and sort of sad, because I know that I lost somebody very, very close to me. And there's nobody ever that can feel that, that space.
If a child's not involved in saying goodbye, they are going to have a lifetime of being incomplete, never having had that sense of being a part. I mean, they were part of a life, but they weren't part of the death. And therefore, it's very difficult to become part of that memory picture.
It was very important to me that when my wife died, that my family members would become involved in the funeral as much as possible. I did not want my experience as a 5-year-old when my father died to ever be repeated again. I included my son in everything. He was in my arms and shared this very emotional time with us. He shared as much as his maturity would allow him to share.
I think what happens with children is that there are certain things that they can and cannot comprehend. And it's really hard for a child at age 3 or 4 or 5 possibly to really understand the whole concept of spirituality. But they can understand that the body stops working.
You tell children the truth in the way that you would tell them anything. You just do it age appropriately, honestly, from the heart, and let them know you don't know all the answers. That's just fine, as long as you are telling them your own truth.
I didn't want to tell him anything until I had spoken to someone who could give me some guidance on how to tell a child that he's lost his father. And they told me to just tell him the truth and to talk to him about it. He came home from school and I said, "Kevin, I have something to tell you." And he said, "Okay." And he said, "Is it good or bad?" And I said, "It's bad. It's bad news." And we pulled the chairs up really close. And then I told him, I said, "You know, Kevin, your dad died last night." And so he just said, "What happened?" And I said, "Well, we don't really know, but you know, your dad was not healthy. And he died while he was in his bed."
I think from the time your children are very young, they want to trust their parents, and their parents want to make sure that their kids feel that sense of trust. So telling kids the honest truth from the beginning will never get you in trouble.
They lost a neighbor, Maury Berman. The Bermans have been our neighbors for 11 years since we've been in this home. And they watched the kids grow up.
Maury made me happy because he just made me smile every time I saw him.
He find the ball and we just play catch back and forth. And then he'll say something like, "We'll have a game. First one who drops it loses." And then so we'll keep on going until somebody drops it. And say that I drop it. And then he'll say, "Well, that didn't count. I'll give you another chance."
And he was one of my best friends.
My mom was fixing flowers and she was real quiet. And I knew something was going wrong because my mom, whenever she gets real sad, she's real quiet. And so I said, "Mom, what's wrong?" And then she said, "Uncle Maury just died."
My mom told me that Maury died, and I felt like I could cry all the time, but I'm used to it now.
Losing somebody is just like losing a body part. Because when you break your arm, it hurts. And when you lose somebody, it hurts.
I told Larry, talk to your mom. Just hold her hand and talk to your mom. And he did. And I was surprised what came out of his mouth. "Mom, I'm gonna be okay. Mom, are you ready to go be with Granddad, Grandma? Mom, it's okay. We will be okay. I will be fine."
I felt that was the only reason why she was holding on, because she thought that it would be too hard for me to lose her. So I guess once I gave her that okay, that's when she let go.
And I brought him home. And then when we got home, the phone rang. And they told me that she had passed. And I said, "Larry?" And he said, "Yes, I know her." And he came into my room. And he says, "Mom died?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I felt that she would."
And then I believe I cried, but it wasn't like a cry of sorrow. It was like kind of relief, like she's not suffering anymore.
Being around your loved ones when they're passing helps. And I think children should be allowed to be a part of that process.
Today, a lot of people are dying at home. You have hospice situations. Kids are part of the dying process as well as part of the death. So I think that it becomes a necessity for parents to be much more open, because the dying part is more open, and then it's a natural process that death also be a more open subject when it comes to your kid being a part of it.
It was very, very difficult for me losing my father. Very difficult, because he went so fast. And the problem that I had, being an adult, I never got a chance to say goodbye. Larry and I discussed that. But with my mother's death, I was with her until she took her last breath. That's what I wanted Larry to experience.
When I finally found out what was going on, that's when I started really taking advantage of the time I had with her. Instead of going outside, I might stay in all day.
When you're going through an illness and you're dealing with anticipatory grief, you have the luxury of knowing the limits of time. And therefore, you make that time more meaningful for both the person who's dying and also yourself.
I'd like to have gone to the funeral just to see him one last time before they buried him.
I felt really sad. I wanted to speak to him and tell him how my day was and all those sorts of kind of things.
The importance of rituals is that it does give a child a place in which to go. What do I do with my feelings? Where am I supposed to be in all of this? And the rituals give them a place to be. This is how people respond when somebody dies.
After Maury's funeral and relatives were at the home, the kids went over by themselves. They spent a half a day making cards and decorating them and picking just the right flowers from our backyard to take over to Aunt Jan. And so I let them go and just be with her alone. They kind of felt like they were really being helpful, and they wanted to help her through that time.
I just went over there, I gave her a hug and a kiss just to make her feel better.
And he went through and picked out pictures, favorite pictures, and pasted them on a poster board, and then he wrote something underneath each picture. And when we went to church, to the rectory, Kevin was there. He wasn't excluded from anything, and that was their advice.
I think that there's a message that needs to be communicated, that this is, although a sad event, it's also kind of an event where we can really sit back, reflect, and say thanks for what a wonderful life this person had and how lucky we are to have had them. That's a very important message to continue to reinforce is, I know you're sad, I know you loved him very much, but that's why we need to do this. That's why we need to come together as a family, come together as a community, and say goodbye.
The cemetery is an important place for children to be because it gives them a sense of closure. This is where the body is. This is what we do at the cemetery. It gives them a place, even though they can go anywhere to talk to their loved one. It gives them a visualization and a place to go. And this is where they said goodbye.
When my father died, I was not allowed to go to the cemetery. So I had no closure. My son, Sully, was 2 years old at the time of my wife's death. And at that age, it was very important to keep everything as physical as possible. He'll ask me, "Where's my mommy?" And I can tell him, "Do you remember that your mommy died?" And he'll say, "Yes." "What happened?" And I said, "Do you remember Mommy had a disease?" And he'll say, "Yes, she had cancer." And I'll say to him, "Sully, do you remember going to the funeral home?" And he'll say, "Yes. I saw Mommy in her casket."
When Maury died, it was kind of unexpected because then that made me think any day now I could die or I can get really sick. And then I started crying because I was scared to die. And then my dad came in, he said, "You're not gonna die. You still have a long time left, on this earth."
When kids say to me, "Can I die?" I always say to them, "Absolutely." And I do it very matter-of-factly. As a matter of fact, everything and everybody that lives eventually will die. And then I'll say, "You see this desk? Can this desk die?" "No." "See this chair? Can this chair die?" "No." You see that bird? Can the bird die? Absolutely. Can you see, and you're talking about trees, now you're talking about things that are alive. And to everything, there's a lifespan. What you really want to do to kids that are healthy and, just thinking about it because they've just had a death is you want them to understand that there's a process called life and that everybody has an expectancy of living. And that becomes 80 to 85, 86 years for younger kids right now. They say we could live till 90. I think it's really nice for kids to think about it in that sense. You know what? I got a long way to go.
We did have a period, I would say a couple of months after Mike died, when we started seeing some anger in Kevin. And I remember that he was just upset. He was angry, and his temperament changed. And one night, he and I were really clashing. And I just said to him, "Kevin, what is wrong? What is wrong with you?" And he said, "I'm mad because my dad died."
Anger is a wonderful emotion. Anger and guilt are two great emotions. You have to go through the wall to get to the other side. And anger and guilt are the wall. Knock them down, one brick at a time, or one area at a time. Deal with those kinds of issues, but to ignore them only means that sometime later on you're going to have to deal with it.
I cannot envision being 12, 11, 10, and losing a mom or a dad. I cannot envision that. But having him around me has taught me the pain that kids have.
When my mom first died, I had the thoughts that, I had been cheated because, I kept thinking, why it happened to me? And then as I grew up, I just realized that it wasn't my fault and that everything happened for a reason.
I think Larry is accepting that his mother is gone. I really do. And each day he gets stronger and stronger.
Older children really feel cheated. I don't understand why this happened. What did I do about it? And everybody else has the intact, perfect family where they've never experienced this. That's how children think very concretely. Everybody has this, I don't. And my family has been cheated, and I've been cheated. And this has to be handled very carefully because if people who feel cheated can carry that their whole lives.
What's really important for us to understand is there's no right way to grieve, there's no wrong way to grieve. Again, I've been in this business close to 30 years, and nobody's ever given me a prescription to hand down to a family and say, this is how you need to grieve for the loss of this particular individual.
And that was one reason why we did something some people might have thought was strange, but he died on October 28th. And Kevin's school had a Halloween party the day of the wake. And Kevin very much wanted to go to that Halloween party. And Kevin and I left the funeral home, and we went to school, and he went to his party with his friends. And he was able to joyfully get right into that party.
Children do have a more vivid imagination than adults. Children are able to be sad one minute and happy the next.
You cannot take the kid out of being a kid. I mean, kids do not have the ability to be intense on a 12-hour day. If it's a 10 o'clock funeral in the morning, they're not going to be up at 10 o'clock at night with the same intensity of that. They're going to need to go play a video game. They're going to want to have a friend over. They're going to want to get to the computer. They're going to want to make some phone calls. They're going to want to be kids. And so be prepared that kids are kids, and you cannot take the kid out of being a kid.
The school responded in a wonderful way. Every single child made a card. Kevin did not go to bed that night until he looked at every single card.
And I try to tell kids, you'll never, ever be wrong by reaching out. Now, they may not, that child may not receive you in the way that you have reached out to them, but you've reached out. That's all you can do at that particular point. And that's what kids really need, is to know that people care about them.
My friends held me by, like, being there for me. They didn't know what to say to me a lot of times, so what they did was just, like, listen a lot, because most of my friends haven't experienced death like I had.
I don't like the idea of when someone dies that suddenly you can't talk about them anymore. I want to talk about them. I want to keep them alive. We have a lot of pictures of Mike around the house.
It's very important for them to remember their mother. And I will continue to include her spirit in everything we do.
We have to take somebody's life, celebrate it, make sure that we, again, go back to the celebration of life, the celebration of love, and the celebration of the legacy that moves on. That's really important for kids, and it's also important to let them know that it's okay to feel sad, and that there is, you know what, life begins anew. This is a new beginning.
Clearly, when you lose a parent at a very, very young age, there's changing feelings over time. The days when he's playing on his soccer team and baseball team and there's no dad on the sidelines, those moments are yet to come. So he hasn't fully experienced everything that goes along with this. This is a lifetime experience, and I know that.
I think it was really as time went on and they were outside and there was no one on the other side of the fence that it really became more and more real to them. Even now, I think that package is still being unwrapped.
To realize that we need to love our parents, our siblings, our friends, our grandparents. We need to love them as much as we possibly can when they're here, because the bottom line, we're all gonna die. We're all